What do these three men have in common? They're all Arab, that's most definite. Are they Muslim? Yes, again, correct. They're all Muslim. They also happen to be all Egyptian. Again, a unifying factor. But the one thing that combines all these men is that they have what is known as a Zebiba on their face. Translated from Arabic, Zebiba means a raisin. And we're not talking about the dried fruit kind, but the mark on the forehead that becomes prominent as time elapses. From an Islamic cultural perspective, the Zebiba signifies piety and devotion, and in revealing that those who carry such a mark are extremely disciplined in faith. A faith that demands prostration and kneeling before God during their prayers at the very least 34 times on a daily basis. 34 times when the forehead meets the ground. At times that ground can be a soft surface such as a prayer mat, while at others what receives the bare skin of foreheads can be much harsher, like a thin rough carpet, a straw mat, and even, at times, a tiled or concrete floor. When one comes upon a person with a dark mark upon their foreheads, the first thoughts are that this person is of high spiritual commitment and one who is upon the righteous path, more devout than many. Some literal interpretations of Surah Al-Fath verse 29 in the Quran state that within the holy text exists reference to such a physical mark of piety. You see them bowing and prostrating in prayer, seeking Allah's bounty and pleasure. The sign of brightness can be seen on their faces from the traces of prostrating in prayer. Whereas other and more common interpretations of this same verse speak of this mark not literally on the forehead, but a mark that is an emanation of light from the face of believers, an aura of calm and peace that has come upon them due to their spiritual surrender. In the mythology of some Muslims, on the day of resurrection, the Zebiba will glow and fluoresce with a powerful and intense white light, signifying the powerful Islam or surrender of those believers who carry such a mark. Nowhere in Islamic scripture or tradition is this clearly outlined, and hence my referral to it purely as myth. So how do we explain how this mark makes its mark? There's quite a lot of difficulty in assessing and qualifying the many reasons for the resultant mark on devout Muslims. There are no real and tangible surveys or studies concerning this phenomenon, but one can make educated guesses as to how they might come about. Dermatologically speaking, such prayer calluses are deemed as hyperpigmentation, and a big factor in the appearance of such pigmentation is the type of skin that each Muslim has, hence so many intangibilities, and consequently there's no common and repetitive benchmark. And so, what I actually conducted was a visual photographic assessment of various cultures over modern times that have indeed exhibited such a marking. Let me first discount the premise that by no means this mark is a miracle or stigmata, as is the case in other faiths. Ultimately, it's a physical equation: pressure, friction, and a necessary duration of time. This is science made simple, a consequential byproduct of certain conditions that leads to the Zebiba taking shape and form over time. The first cause is relative to the environment, where the believer is raised and where he or she practiced the rituals of the faith over and over again. In poorer nations and communities, one can't take it for granted that prayer would necessarily be in comfortable circumstances. Hard floors, rough finishes, and at times bare earth was all that was afforded. With such contact over and over again, over decades can for sure lead to the creation of such callusing and eventual darkening of the skin. It is said that for such a mark to take form, between 30 and 40 years must elapse. Another reason could be the added piety and devotion of the believer, where it wasn't strictly the following of the 34 daily moments when forehead touched floor, but when such repetitions went into the 50s, 60s, and 70s as a result of viable additional prayers. Then add to that the extension of the duration of time when the forehead is placed on the floor, and the change to the skin surface becomes more likely and plausible. In theory, places of prayer should be cleansed repeatedly, but depending on which nation you're in can vary in their level of upkeep and sterility. This situation leads us to the third potential reason for the appearance of a Zebiba, and when it's not due to the callusing of the skin. This cause can be when the hygienic conditions of where prayer takes place, public areas such as mosques or outdoor areas, are rife with bacteria or fungi, subsequently leading to the infection of the skin. then resulting in a discoloration and thickening of the skin surface. Now, the next reason is when we start to shift from the category of reasons that are coincidental and towards the category of a hybrid of the accidental and intentional, where the prostration and placement of the forehead on the floor surface isn't enough, but must be accompanied by a pressure and force that is unnatural. And the justification for this is that the believer feels that there must be some discomfort associated with the act of bowing to God, to further enforce and exaggerate the moment of surrender. Such actions can increase the likelihood of a Zebiba's fast-tracked appearance on the forehead of any Muslim. In this last case, I refer to it as a hybrid because there's a conscious act that has resulted in the mark's formation. And we see this in the final reason for the Zebiba showing up on the forehead of Muslims, when it's purely all intention and disingenuous, when societal belonging becomes the cause for full-fledged self-application of skin surface damage to then result as soon as realistically possible in a Zebiba. Intentional because there's this societal safety in being labeled and identified as a devout and pious Muslim. And such a mark can lead to an immediate public declaration that the person who is marked has such a higher state of being, and hence exempt from question. And upon them physically showing such piety and devotion are granted a higher state of morality, values, and ethics. Such practices are common in societies that have major pressures associated with religious adherence, extremism, and politicized Islam. Now, the Zebiba can be a result of one of these reasons I have just provided, and it can also be the result of a composition of two or more of them, be them coincidental or intentional. But one must keep in mind certain findings that are fairly objective and should shed light on why the phenomenon of Zebibas is fairly contentious. First, when we look back in recent history, say the last century, Zebibas were rare. I say rare, although I mean very, very, very rare. In the many images of heads of religious institutions and leading jurists in the largest Muslim countries like Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Pakistan, not one has a Zebiba. For example, when we look back at the Grand Mufti of Egypt, the chief jurist, over the last century, not one has such a mark. Are there many others more devout than them? The second curious thing, though, is that this phenomenon seems to be mainly concentrated within Egypt as a geographic area, with some exceptions here and there across the Muslim world. More often than not, even those found outside Egypt are Egyptian. I'm unsure what to make of this finding, but it does pose a question of environment, one where political, economic, and societal difficulties and pressures lead believers to enact different codes of conduct. Also intriguing is the fact that this is a male-only condition. Granted, it's difficult to ascertain the commonality of the Zebiba amongst women in general and Egyptian women more specifically, as most of the pious and devout Muslim women would theoretically be veiled and hence the Zebiba might be obscured. But again, in my research with pious Egyptian friends, none could recall Zebibas on the foreheads of their grandmothers or aunts. So it's important to note that if we take a broad strokes cross-section of concentrated Muslim societies from Morocco to the west all the way east to Indonesia, it would be very hard to find wide-ranging manifestations of such markings. Faith and piety in Islam is in the heart and nowhere else, and not on any forehead, that's for sure. There are as many pious people and as many not so who are both marked by the Zebiba. The absence of such a mark also doesn't conclude that one has not performed their religious duty or has indeed surpassed them. Having one is insignificant. Islam is not about appearances, not the beard, not the veil, not the suit without the tie, and definitely not the Zebiba.